Hello everyone, and welcome to this special Battlefield Field Report. The aurora borealis illuminates the Ukrainian battlefield, and amid the turmoil, Ukrainian forces once again stand firm, delivering heavy blows to Russian troops. The Russian forces struggling to deploy aerial bombs, and the stories from the Kursk front are nothing short of remarkable. Initially, the Russian army boasted a massive offensive, claiming the deployment of the 155th Field Infantry Brigade and the 56th and 106th Airborne Divisions, launching the second phase of their counteroffensive in Korenyovo and surrounding the Russian media even reported that 1,500 Ukrainian soldiers were encircled. Ukrainian war bloggers candidly admitted the intensity of the battles. At critical moments, Ukrainian drone pilots and artillerymen were forced to fight as infantry. Ultimately, Ukrainian forces successfully retreated into the forest, escaping the Russian encirclement. Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces lost 4 villages, but later brought in reinforcements from the 82nd Air Assault Brigade from Sumy, launching a fierce counterattack that inflicted heavy losses on the Russians and pushed the front lines back, averting disaster. However, Ukraine's defensive deployments in the Battle of Kursk have puzzled many. Then, knowing that a Russian counteroffensive was imminent, they withdrew well-equipped regular troops and replaced them with inadequately equipped territorial defense brigades, leading to a passive stance. Fortunately, timely reinforcements arrived, and through defensive counterattacks, they managed to regain control. Western observers have voiced various opinions on the curries and state of the Ukrainian battlefield, especially regarding the Territorial Defense Forces TRO. Originally established for emergencies, they lack proper equipment and training, but are forced to face the Russian offensive head-on, bearing the brunt of the assault. Some have pointed out that the Ukrainian military lacks effective high-level command and coordination, particularly the divisional and Tabor Corps repeatedly highlighted. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Ukrainian 425th Assault Battalion continues to advance. Supported by Cossack MRAP, mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles infantry squads launched a successful counterattack and have pushed 2 kilometers along the railway into the outskirts. Other fronts remain relatively unchanged recently. There's been talk about Ukraine's F-16 shooting down 2 Russian 34 fighters, one of which turned out to be a Su-57. This news has been a pleasant surprise. However, what's been shot down is less important. Now, crucial point is that more Su-34s will be downed in the future, bringing Russia's aerial bombing campaign to an end. This is almost certain. Currently, the Russian military's tactics are nothing more than artillery barrages and human wave attacks. They have few other options. As a result, even their artillery fire is diminishing. Russian rocket artillery has been reduced from 1,436 units in 2021 to just 339 units now. Estimates suggest that, including reserves, Russia can deploy about 500 to 700 rocket launchers, leading to a significant decrease in their artillery deployment recently. With insufficient firepower, Ukrainian forces naturally fight more effectively, and efficiency of eliminating Russian troops will significantly improve. This winter is poised to be a turning point. Moreover, Russia's losses are becoming increasingly hard for Moscow to ignore. According to estimates from Meduza News, Russian casualties will soon exceed 80,000. If we follow the Ukrainian General Staff statistics of daily Russian losses exceeding 1,000 personnel, Russia's total attrition could reach 800,000 by the end of the year. The next year, Russia is highly likely to face a genuine shortage of manpower, which will also affect domestic production. As for the rumored involvement of North Korean troops, this indirectly reflects that Russia has run out of available personnel, and conscription is already an imminent issue. NATO has finally decided to abandon all illusions and officially designate Russia as an enemy state. Since the signing of the NATO-Russia Founding Act in 1997, both sides had hoped to build a peaceful and stable Europe. But Russia's aggression in Ukraine has turned all that into history. The NATO member states have made it clear that at the Brussels meeting in October, they will reassess their relations with Russia from economic, military, and even cultural perspectives, fully preparing for confrontation. This NATO strategy is about to emerge, and Russia's ruling elite are well aware the past decades has ended, negotiations are no longer tools for buying time, and NATO's tough staff sends chills down their spines. The relationship between NATO and Russia can no longer return to the past, especially as reflected in the Finnish president's evaluation that NATO is in 3.0. This new era NATO will no longer be the alliance attempting to maintain peace through cooperation, but a military force centered on defense and confrontation. And NATO member states no longer see Russia as a partner, but are prepared to regard it as an enemy state. And the Brussels meeting is just the beginning. Next year's summit in the Hague will formally draft this new NATO-Russia strategy, marking a fundamental shift in the European security landscape. The newly appointed NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has become a key figure in this transformation. On his third day in office, he visited Kyiv and emphasized that NATO must ensure Ukraine's victory as a sovereign, independent, democratic country. His attitude stems from years of profound understanding of Russia. Back in 2014, when Malaysia Airlines Flight May 17 was shot down by Russian military anti-aircraft missiles, causing hundreds of Dutch citizens to lose their lives, Rutte's trust in the Putin regime completely collapsed. During his tenure as Dutch Prime Minister, Rutte not only promoted increased defense spending, exceeding NATO's requirement of 2% of GDP, but also took the lead in providing Ukraine with F-16 fighters, artillery, drones, and other aid, becoming one of Ukraine's most steadfast European allies. Rutte is not only a hardliner in NATO, but also a friend of Trump. During his campaign, Trump had a wavering attitude toward NATO, but Rutte's understanding of Trump allowed him to step forward at critical moments to reassure the international community. He once publicly stated in London that Trump fully understands the importance of the Ukrainian war and believes that supporting Ukraine is not only about Europe's security, but also America's future. This timely reassurance undoubtedly eased European countries amid uncertainties before the U.S. election. Rutte prefers to focus NATO's efforts on European security rather than merely serving U.S. interests. He has repeatedly emphasized that NATO should not act solely according to U.S. demands, but should consider Europe's own interests more. This means that if Trump wants NATO's European allies to focus more on regional security rather than relying on the U.S., Rutte, as Trump's old friend, can play the role of mediator with his anti-Russia stance and firm commitment to European security. They can not only promote Trump's vision, but also strengthen Europe's autonomous defense system. Known for his skill in reconciling conflicts and negotiation abilities, Rutte has taken a tough stance against Russia since assuming the role of NATO Secretary General, while also striving to promote global multilateral dialogue and cooperation to resolve international conflicts and disputes. This balanced strategy has not only helped NATO effectively respond to challenges posed by Russia, but also strengthened NATO's internal cohesion, steadily advancing further integration of the European Defense Alliance. The NATO strategy against Russia is to gradually wear it down, starting by excluding Russia from SWIFT from some side, or by various sanctions and blockades, pressing Moscow to Pausers the brink, allowing the Russian army to sink deeper into Ukraine, where Ukraine excels at protracted warfare. Without firing many additional shots, comprehensive economic, technological, and diplomatic blockades can exhaust Russia. This unseen war is even more intriguing than the Cold War. In September, the UK and the US stirred debates over whether weapons aiding Ukraine should be used against Russia, causing unrest in the Kremlin. Baltic states and Poland made grand gestures to build border barriers, with Lithuania directly installing anti-tank Dragon's Teeth on the Niemen River Bridge on the Belarusian border. Rutte is not only a hardliner in NATO, but also a freighter of Trump. This point has drawn subtle attention to NATO's future strategy. During his campaign, Trump had a wavering attitude toward NATO, but Rutte's understanding of Trump allowed him to step forward at critical moments to reassure the international community. He once publicly stated in London that Trump fully understands the importance of the Ukrainian war and believes that supporting Ukraine is not only about Europe's security, but also America's future. This timely reassurance undoubtedly eased European countries' concerns amid uncertainties before the U.S. election. Rutte prefers to focus NATO's efforts on European security rather than merely serving U.S. interests. And he has repeatedly emphasized that NATO should not act solely according to U.S. demands, but should consider Europe's own interests more. This means that if Trump wants NATO's European allies to focus more on regional security rather than relying on the U.S., Rutte, as Trump's old friend, can play the role of mediator with his anti-Russia stance and firm commitment to European security. He can not only promote Trump's vision, but also strengthen Europe's autonomous defense system. Known for his skill in reconciling conflicts and negotiation abilities, Rutte has taken a tough stance against Russia since assuming the role of NATO Secretary General, and while also striving to promote global multilateral dialogue and cooperation to resolve international conflicts and disputes. This balanced strategy has not only helped NATO effectively respond to challenges posed by Russia, but also strengthened NATO's internal cohesion, steadily advancing further integration of the European Defense Alliance. NATO's strategy against Russia is to gradually wear it down, starting by excluding Russia from SWIFT, followed by various sanctions and blockades, pressing Moscow to veto, allowing the Russian army to sink deeper into Ukraine, where Ukraine excels at protracted warfare. Without firing many additional shots, comprehensive economic, technological, and diplomatic blockades can exhaust Russia. This unseen war is even more intriguing than the Cold War. In September, the UK and the US stirred debates over whether weapons aiding Ukraine should be used against Russia, causing unrest in the Kremlin. Baltic states and Poland made grand gestures to build border barriers, with Lithuania directly installing anti-tank Dragon's Teeth on the Niemen River Bridge on the Belarusian border. Western media followed up by hyping the Suwalki Gap threat theory, extensively exaggerating Russia's threat. The underlying logic is to close the door to Russia's access to Europe. No matter how the Russian military recruits forces from Belarus, Kaliningrad, and the Baltic coast, it is futile. Meanwhile, NATO increased the frequency of exercises, expanded its forces, and strategically pressured Moscow. In the spring and summer of 2024, the US and France led a countermeasure plan against Russia called Minimum Necessary Capability. NATO aims to increase its troops by 250,000 before 28, expanding the current 82 brigades to 131 with a clear focus on Germany, Poland, and Baltic coastal countries. The emphasis obvious aimed at Russia, clearly preparing for the conclusion of the Russia-Ukraine war and future conflicts. This year, European countries have assisted numerous Ukrainian cities with comprehensive heating projects, power plants, boiler systems, generators, and solar systems, and continue to provide F-16 fighters and Patriot air defense systems. Adding Mirage 2000 fighters. Compared to the past 2 winters, Ukraine's strategic logistics capabilities are much stronger. Currently, the 14 new brigades that NATO has armed and trained for Ukraine have all returned home. 20% are deployed in Kursk and Donbas, while the rest are on standby. Various signs confirm that NATO and Ukraine hope to leverage this fresh force to launch an offensive and seize the initiative in winter warfare. The Ramstein meeting, originally scheduled for mid-October, had everyone eagerly anticipating, especially against the backdrop of the current Ukrainian situation and global security hotspots. Just as the meeting was about to convene, President Biden suddenly announced that due to an impending hurricane in the US, he would cancel his trip to Germany. This decision led other countries to follow suit, not attending, and the meeting was subsequently postponed. However, the so-called hurricane did not reach the projected speeds of 250 miles per hour. As mainstream media had hyped, it ended up with winds of only tens of miles per hour, causing no significant damage. By Sunday, German sources reported that Biden planned to visit Germany for one day on October 18th. Obviously, a one-day visit cannot accommodate the Ramstein meeting. With the US election approaching, all parties are watching, and it's uncertain when this meeting will take place. Nonetheless, German Chancellor Scholz recently stated that even if the US ceases to support Ukraine, Europe will continue to aid Ukraine until final victory is achieved. Zelensky, seizing the moment, embarked on a whirlwind tour of major European nations last week, seeking further assistance to navigate the difficult period that may arise if Trump returns to office. On the 10th, he met with British Prime Minister Starmer, submitting a victory plan. This plan includes military and diplomatic elements, such as Ukraine's application to join NATO, aiming to strengthen Ukraine's negotiating position and persuade Russia to accept a just peace. Zelensky had submitted this plan to Biden during his late September visit to the US and discussed it with Trump and Harris, but they did not respond positively. Although the full details of the plan have not been disclosed, the Kiev government emphasized that Ukraine can only negotiate from a position of strength. After meeting with Starmer, Zelensky stated that the British leader would work with allies to develop further military aid plans. In London, Zelensky also met with NATO Secretary General Rutte. Since taking office on October 1st, Rutte's first visit was to Ukraine, demonstrating his high attention to the Ukrainian issue. During the meeting in London, they discussed adding new air defense systems, enhancing the Ukrainian Air Force's capabilities, and allies investing in Ukraine's production of artillery shells, drones, and long-range weapons. Rutte stated that Ukraine has the right to decide when and under what conditions to start peace talks. They emphasized that only through continuous military aid can Putin realize he cannot win on the battlefield, thus forcing Russia to the negotiating table. On the afternoon of the 10th, Zelensky arrived in Paris to meet French President Macron. During the talks, Zelensky reaffirmed Ukraine's determination to resist the enemy to the end and refuted rumors of land for peace, stating that this is a tactic of Russian information warfare. Earlier, at the third Ukraine Southeastern Europe Summit held in Croatia, Zelensky delivered a speech pointing out that the current battlefield situation provides opportunities for the Ukrainian army. He stated that the Ukrainian military will launch a counteroffensive by 2025 at the latest to end the war. The Dubrovnik Declaration passed at the meeting clearly expressed full support for Ukraine's independent sovereignty and territorial integrity and strongly condemned Russia's acts of aggression. Serbian President Vučić also attended the summit. While purchasing Rafale fighters from France and providing artillery shells to Ukraine, he also participated in an anti-Russia meeting, obviously trying to walk a delicate middle path in the complex international situation. On the 11th, Zelensky visited Italy, meeting with Prime Minister Meloni and visiting Pope Francis. He presented the Pope with a painting depicting the story of Marika, reminding the world of Russia's war crimes in Ukraine. The painting shows the tragedy that occurred in the outskirts of Kiev in March 2022. A little girl named Marika witnessed Russian soldiers brutally killing her parents and grandmother. Despite such shocking scenes, Pope Francis has so far not urged Russia to withdraw troops, only repeatedly calling for a ceasefire. Meanwhile, Turkey also expressed support for Ukraine. Turkish President Erdogan's chief advisor, Yeltsin, stated at the meeting that Turkey supports Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, and demands that Russia return the Ukrainian territories respectively occupied. In this series of diplomatic efforts, Zelensky spared no effort to secure more support from European countries, especially during the uncertain period before the US election. On the 11th, Zelensky received a high-level reception in Germany. Scholz promised to provide Ukraine with 1.4 billion euros in military aid by the end of the year. Belgium, Denmark, and Norway also participated in the aid plan, which includes air defense weapons, armored vehicles, and ammunition, exactly what is urgently needed on the Ukrainian battlefield. France's Macron promised to deliver 20 Mirage 20005 fighters by the spring of 2025. Originally, France only planned to provide 6, but obviously realized that their previous aid was insufficient, so they decided to increase support. After all, in the past few years, France had only provided a few armored reconnaissance vehicles to Ukraine, not even tanks. Clearly, they have recognized their shortcomings. After intense negotiations with Hungary, the EU finally reached an agreement to provide Ukraine with a 35 billion euro loan. Ukraine does not need to repay this loan. The EU will cover the funds through investment returns from frozen Russian assets. On the 12th, Lithuania announced that it would provide Ukraine with 5,000 domestically produced drones equipped with advanced electronic warfare systems by the end of the year. Additionally, the US and Japan are negotiating to produce AIM-120 air-to-air missiles for Ukraine and plan to start a feasibility study soon. On the surface, this is military aid for Ukraine, but in essence, it is to establish a missile production line in Japan, preparing for potential maritime and air blockades in the future. Japan's number of F-35 fighters will increase significantly, along with Harpoon anti-ship missiles and AIM-120 air-to-air missiles. Obviously, these deployments are aimed at China. But finally, Zelensky requested the UK to provide Dragonfire laser weapons. This is the UK's cutting-edge technology. If Ukraine can obtain this weapon, Iranian drones on the Ukrainian battlefield will be shot down instantly. That's all for today's special report. Thanks for watching, folks. So stay tuned for more of Russia's finest military comedy. But don't forget to like and subscribe for your daily dose of chaos.